Welcome to In-House Conversations with Matthew Henson, sponsored by TD. I'm Joey Golish of Mr. Saturday, and I'll be your moderator today. Matthew, I feel like for me you need no introduction, but Matthew is the talented, world-renowned stylist of some of your favorite artists like ASAP Rocky and The Weeknd, and he's much more than that. I feel super lucky to be sitting down with you today. How you doing, Matthew?
I'm good. How are you, Joey?
Can't complain. It's like nice to see you digitally.
Yeah, nice to speak with you.
Yeah, I think everybody today is gonna be really excited to hear a lot about like your story and everything you're working on now. But for everybody who's not super familiar with your background, I'd love if you could just like start by talking a bit about your journey and what you do.
Um, thank you for the introduction. Again, I'm Matthew. It's great to be speaking with you guys this afternoon. Thank you for listening in. I'm a stylist. Even though that word has kind of become a bit strange and bastardized lately, I do still consider myself a stylist in some way, shape, or form or fashion. But I think what I do is more or less work with my clients in the capacity of just helping them create some like really dynamic wardrobe moments. I think styling, when people hear it, they think that you're forcing someone into a garment or something like that, and that's not what I do at all. Um, my work style is very collaborative, and it's very much a partnership with everyone that I work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the coolest part about what you do is that you're not prescribing something. You're really bringing out the best in people. But I mean, you weren't always working with ASAP and Able. I mean, where did you start? How did this whole journey begin?
Oh, I started out interning and assisting all over the place. I kind of landed at a small magazine in New York City. Well, an office. They had an office in New York City called Flaunt Magazine. Um, and I met the fashion director, at that time, who was Long Yuen, and he took me underneath his wing and taught me, everything that I needed to know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the right way and the wrong way. And I feel very fortunate to have met him and worked underneath him and to have learned underneath him. I started out as an intern. There was quite a few of us at that time, and I remember there was. We had this really big shoot coming up, and I don't want to say who it's for because I hate name dropping, but it was like literally something that I had dreamed about since, I had first seen him drop his first video and his first album, and I was so excited that he was allowing all of us assistants and interns to work on the video. And then maybe like 2 days before the shoot, oh, I guess I should probably provide a little bit more details. We all were able to creatively pull whatever we wanted from, our contacts and brains. We were able to put together like our own individual point of view for the story, and we were all going to collaborate on this. And it was really exciting. But 2 days before that shoot, I keep saying 2 days before that shoot, another shoot popped up, and it wasn't as exciting or glamorous as the cover shoot that everybody had been preparing for. And I remember it being a situation where, like I felt like a duty where I was working and I knew that it needed to be done. And, Long didn't ask anybody to stop what they were doing to work on the other story. He was just like, someone needs to do this, so you need to figure it out. Whoever decides to do it won't be going to the cover shoot. And as much as I wanted to be on set for the cover shoot and be around somebody that I respected at that time so much, I actually decided to do the smaller, less glamorous shoot because one, it needed to be done, but also I was really going to be able to like have my own point of view and to work on something that was my own and not work on a group project. So I've never been great at group projects. Um, and, it was heartbreaking that I didn't get to go to that cover shoot and work on that. But in the end, by me taking the initiative to do the story on my own, I got to see my own talent on its own, and it really inspired me to keep going. And I actually landed a job there after that. So it was really great. And it's a really great testament to knowing sometimes that you might not be doing something that is not as exciting or as glamorous as what you might think or what you might want people to think. But sometimes taking the road less traveled will bring you to a place where you are going to further yourself along in your career and you're going to stand out from a group of people.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, I think anywhere you can be like providing more impact usually is also a much better learning experience too, right? I mean, you would have been one of, I don't know how many interns on set, but
Five.
getting
There
to
was
run
like
a
five
set.
of us.
Yeah. Plus like, the lead stylist. And I think that also, I'm sure that Long appreciated that probably more than you even knew at the time. So I
Yeah.
wish I
I think
had
that was a
like,
learning. I think he never really said much in terms of what we needed to do and what we didn't need to do. He kind of led by example, and I remember being in plenty of situations with him on other shoots. I used to go to a lot of shoots with him, um, and just from watching the way that he worked and the way that he worked with talent, I knew that he was giving away game. He wasn't really like saying this is what you need to do. He was expecting everybody to figure it out on their own, and I think that was a pivotal point for me in my career. Getting to do that shoot and feeling that confidence that I could do something like that on my own. Seeing that in print in a magazine, I was able to go back home and show my parents, show my family, and it's something that speaking about it now, I keep forgetting how important it is, but it like kind of like reinvigorates me now even talking about it.
yeah, I mean, it's always like those little moments that shape you. And it's really cool to hear that like you were able to observe mentorship from not just like an oratory perspective. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people expect that when somebody's mentoring you or when you're around somebody, they're going to be giving you advice, like very much like what you're doing today. But I think a lot of the best mentorship, even that I've experienced, has been a lot of just leading by example. Other than Long, is there anybody that sticks out to you as an important mentor in your career?
For sure, I've been blessed. I've been lucky to have people come into my life and show me and help me walk along this road. And it's important also just to take a step back to understand that sometimes when someone is teaching you something and you're learning from someone, everything is not going to be positive and everything is not going to be the right way. It's important for you to have even negative experiences so that you know how to move forward in your career, so that when you're teaching someone else or someone's working underneath you or learning from you, that you're able to actually pass along those gems to be like, hey, like this might be a pitfall. Don't do that. I learned this. Don't do that. That's how you really like have a legacy and help people along the way as you were helped. I was lucky enough to have another mentor named Stephanie Scott. We came into each other's lives when I was a little bit younger before I started working at Flaunt, and I worked at a smaller magazine in New Jersey where I'm from. And she taught me so much about professionalism and accountability and, keeping track of everything, saving conversations, those things that when it comes to running a business are really important. And then after Flaunt, I worked with someone who is, beyond a mentor to me. His name is Kamarake. Sorry, Memsor Kamarake, and he was the fashion director of Vibe magazine for so many years. You've seen his work. You may not know because some of that work isn't digitalized, so you don't really see it often unless you Google search it. But there was a point in time where I left Flaunt magazine because I just, had reached the ceiling there, and I wasn't necessarily sure on what I wanted to do and taking the next steps. And, Memsor and I had a personal relationship as friends, but I always looked up to him and respected him so much. And he had left Vibe as well. And as a freelancer, he was gracious enough to bring me on so many of his jobs. And it not only helped sustain me financially, but it fed me mentally because I was in a place where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And, seeing him in action and seeing him interact with his clients outside of what he did at the magazine, seeing how his professionalism and his way of working extended outside of that. So many people had grew to love him and respect his work. He was able to amass some really great clients. And he's one of the people that I can say was pivotal in teaching me how to work with talent and how to sustain and maintain those relationships.
Cool. I mean, yeah, in this game, I think relationships are really everything.
Yeah.
Because, especially in fashion, things can change so quickly, but as long as, you're always good to your people, they'll always be there for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Or you
spoke
hope.
briefly. You hope so, yeah. You spoke briefly to, don't do this or maybe don't try that or those moments. I mean, it's fun to talk about wins and great things we've learned, but do you have like a memory that like you're like, I really wish I didn't do that, or something that you learned from a situation that maybe you didn't feel goes or went so well? That would be like cool to hear about.
Yeah, there's been plenty of L's over the over the years. I mean, there's been so many. It's not all sunshine and roses, especially when you work with talent. Because primarily my job at everywhere that I've worked is working with talent in some way, shape, or form. And they're human as well too. There's sometimes their plate is full, huge responsibilities. They don't really have time to come on set and wax poetic about clothes. Sometimes it's just like not that interesting sometimes because it is just, a vanity thing. And obviously it's used to promote projects or, convey messages or whatever the shoot may be for. I just think that sometimes people get uncomfortable. They may take it personal because someone on the other end may not be in the best mood. Not everyone arrives to set happy and ready to work. Sometimes it takes a bit of time to go there. There's been plenty of times I've gone to set with people and you start shooting, they don't like something, they walk off set, and the shoot's over. That's just sometimes how things go. You can't take that personal because sometimes you never know what's going on with someone on the other end. So there's been plenty of that throughout my career. There's sometimes, like I'm not a person that works in a way where there's an agenda. I don't have like a rack full of clothes that I'm, ready to force on someone. I want to have options. I want to make sure there's plenty of stuff that, that I see them wear personally, maybe like a couple of steps above or a couple of steps below, because sometimes, someone dresses really audacious or over the top and you need to like bring it down a bit to like meet what your shoot requirements are or what the story is supposed to be about. So that's a really great thing about being a stylist too. It's fully creative. And sometimes it just doesn't go well. What you have in your head doesn't necessarily work, or, somebody's in a bad mood. So you have to account for all of that being on set. And I think the part of professionalism that is required for a job like this, and I don't mean to make it sound stodgy because it actually is a lot of fun, but you need to know how to balance like your personal feelings and your emotions and your reactions to things, because it's a huge part of your job. Because just because someone doesn't like something that you don't like or that you thought would be amazing doesn't mean that's the end all be all. You still have like a full day of an amazing shoot to go. And for young aspiring stylists, I think that like sometimes you have to really take yourself out of it, and think about the story on a whole and think about the person who you're shooting. And I'll always keep that sense of imagination that you came with, but don't really force your agenda unless they ask. Sometimes they will ask, like, hey, I don't want to think about it, just let me know what to put on.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've always really respected about stylists, I think, is you have such versatile tastes. You have to, mold to almost be a vessel of whoever the client is. As a designer, I feel like my perspective is always so singular. And then when I'm tasked with a project that might be outside of my wheelhouse, it can be a bit difficult. But when I think about the work you do, you have to like so often, shift to be somebody completely different. How does that mesh with like your personal style,
I don't really think I have a personal style. I think that many years ago when I was a younger stylist, or younger in this industry, I cared a bit too much about what I was wearing, how I looked. But I think there was an experience for me just to like really make this whole thing really real. And I won't say the name of the brand because, it gets a little tricky. When I was younger in my career, when I first moved, I had like a bit longer hair, I had like really long locks. And this is prior to some of the social justice movement that we've had and, a little bit more openness in the fashion industry. So I remember going to like appointments, we call them market appointments, where you go re-see the collections after the fashion show. You go, you see all the pieces, you take your pictures, you build your stories in your head, you see your favorite things. So I was going to one of these appointments at a really huge luxury brand, and I went upstairs into the showroom, walked into the showroom, and I was dressed. I looked great. This is when I cared. But I think being Black and I think having a natural hairstyle and just the place in where society was at that time, even though, it wasn't like the 1960s, but, we haven't really come much far from there. So I was received very poorly. They thought that I was a messenger. Mind you, I had like a blazer. I looked great. They like thought I was a messenger, and I felt a little, not crushed, but I think my initial reaction would have been, if I wasn't in a professional situation, would have been to like, let them know exactly, why they were wrong and who I am and why they should never do it again. But I kind of like kept my composure, explained to them who I was, did my job. And, upon leaving, I made it very clear that the interaction was not great in my own very special way. I won't tell you what I did. But it's very funny though, those same people now, I'm a bit more of an asset to them, so they treat me a bit differently. I mean, I would never work with any of those people again. I remember it like it was yesterday. So whenever I see an email from one of those people, I never answer it. I would never work with anyone that they work with. But that's my personal choice because I'm petty and I don't give things up. But I do think that in this industry and in your experience in this very vain industry, you're going to interact with people that are totally disgusting, inhumane, ignorant, but you have to remember what the end goal is. And the end goal is you being able to articulate yourself in the future and tell people what happened to you, make sure that it doesn't happen to other people, and move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. It can always be difficult to like separate emotions from professionalism, but
yeah.
I mean,
and I'm a Pisces, so I'm full of emotion. But going back to personal style, like in the beginning, I really, really cared about how I personally looked, and I would go, buy things. I would work with young designers and get things custom made. I would be like, on the wait list. I would do like my own like personal orders at like the showrooms with the brands, because it was really important for me at that time to express myself in a way outside of my work, in a physical form, that I was into fashion, and fashion was an extension of my expression. But as I got a bit older, I started to realize that it didn't really make a difference how I was dressed. For me, my career has been about word of mouth, my work acumen, just like, other positive things about like how I work and how I do what I do. So it became less about that. So I became very comfortable as, dressing in things that just make me feel comfortable, and less about like how they look. It ends up looking decent. I don't look crazy, but my personal style is non-existent because I put all of that imagination and thought into the things that I do for work.
Right. And I mean, I guess that kind of makes work more fun.
It does make work more fun because, the clothes mean more to me, because it's not like, oh, I have this jacket myself and it doesn't look good on me. It's not going to look good on this person. So it's like taking yourself out of it, And I think my personal style is very simple. I wear like a lot of knits, t-shirts, jeans, nice pants. I'm very simple.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, I think you always look good, but
I appreciate that.
It's an interesting point.
I'll be looking better when you send me some Mr. Saturdays.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point you keep making about like really all you keep saying is that all you're ever focused on at the end of the day is value. I mean, I want to talk a lot about the work that you do with, ASAP and Able, because I think people really want to hear about it. But before I do that, I really want to dive into this kind of, thought process. You're always talking about removing yourself from the process and not thinking too much about emotion and thinking about what drives value. Even that story about Flaunt Magazine taking the smaller shoot and focusing on what your clients need and kind of being that vessel. I think that's a really interesting approach, because I feel so often now that we base people's success on what we see from them, like what they're broadcasting, right? And with you, especially, you're like a ghost on the internet, right? You're not on social media. You do post, but it's very infrequent. And I think that, you've also spoken a bit to a shift in perspective and approach to things as you've matured in your career. And so I think obviously at the beginning you have to broadcast yourself, but you're also dealing with, clients who you have to be respectful of. Can you speak a bit to, the difference between letting people know what you're doing and showing off, really flexing your work versus just, keeping your head down, working and trying to provide that value?
Right. So, I guess from a public facing perspective, it maybe looks like I'm not doing anything because I don't really post on social media. I'm not someone who has a really organic relationship with social media. I mean, my life and my work has been very much about like being caught up in an NDA and being very discreet. or just like really respecting the people that I work with and their privacy. So sometimes, I mean, I even ask, I ask Rocky or I'll ask Abel, like I'll literally text Abel and be like, hey, like I saw you posted this, can I post it? And he'll just be like, LOL, yeah, go ahead. But that's just our relationship because I want to make sure that like he does not feel abused. Although it's like like us working together, he's doing his work, I'm doing my work, my assistant's doing her work. So we're all working, but I don't know. For me, sometimes it feels a bit like and I'm not judging. Everybody has their own thing. This is my thing. I just feel like sometimes I don't want to. I would like to be known for my work, and I don't want to necessarily feel that I'm like taking a piss or being abusive when it comes to the people that I work with. I think there's a very fine line. I think that when I'm excited about all my work, but I think sometimes when I'm just like, wow, like, like I'm so proud of this one thing. Not that I'm not proud of everything, but I will ask like, hey, I want to post this, or I'll ask to post a picture that I have of my own, from set. Like, hey, like, do you like the way that you look in this photo? I'd rather post this than the pictures that everyone else is posting. I think that really has strengthened my relationships with the people that I work with, and it's just my own personal thing. I think that it's amazing when there's a stylist and the talent they work with, and they're like neck and neck. They're just as important as the other. I think that's great because I think that turns into other things. But I feel like I personally love being behind the scenes, and I personally love that space because it allows me to move a little bit in other directions and do other things in the business that I wouldn't necessarily do if I was promoting myself more.
Right. And actually, I mean, it's kind of a great segue into something else I wanted to talk to you about. I feel like you're a lot more than a stylist. I feel like, kind of knowing you a little bit, that you probably do a lot more. I mean, do you think that just with the industry growing, your role has grown, or have you been like actively trying to grow that business? Because you even said earlier, you yourself are a business, and it seems like your scope of responsibilities and the endeavors that you're taking on seem to be growing all the time.
Yeah, well, without, obviously, giving away too many details or speaking too much, I think that, like naturally, when you are someone that works with talent or a personality or brand, I think once you work without looking at what's going on around you and you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, people are watching the way that you work and people are seeing what you can do. So naturally, they're going to hand over more responsibility to you and ask you to take on other things because they see that you can already do it. So I've been fortunate enough to, further, my relationships with the people I work with on the business end as well, because naturally, I have relationships um, and those things can turn into like really amazing partnerships, or just like extensions of the relationships between my clients and the brand. Sometimes it has nothing to do with me. Sometimes it has more to do with like a designer being like, I genuinely like the work that you're doing. I need to meet this person, and they meet, and it becomes a whole other thing. They become friends. It becomes a whole other thing because a lot of the business is disingenuous. You check off a box. Can this person attend this show just so that like it becomes a bigger spectacle, or can this person attend this event so that there's a photo for the internet to see? And then there's that association. I think it should be a little bit more genuine. I think that because there's so much of this industry that is just so fake and it's just so heavy, and I like there's so much that kind of just makes me sad because of like how the industry and how I glamorized the industry in my head to be and how it was, prior to, where we're at right now. But like, I think that there's so many rewarding things that can still happen. I think the industry is changing a bit. I think it's getting a little bit more genuine. Some of the things that are just done to check off boxes or to, like attach a name to are just becoming so old hat. People are seeing through that. And I think that we'll continue to move in that direction. And I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see younger stylists do more with their clients. Because there's a possibility there. You don't just have to bring clothes. You can have conversations with people about their business and how to further their business and like things and ideas that you have. And you become business partners on certain things, which is great. So I think that if you're not being enterprising and you're not thinking about just what's on the rack. I think, most people that you work with, if there's a mutual respect there, will have you along for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely like a balance to be spoken for as well, focusing on the
Yeah,
work you have to do while also opening doors for yourself, right? Nobody wants that
for
person
sure.
on set who's going off, be like, let's do this and this and this, so they're not focusing on today's job. But
Or
I
like
mean, you
doing too
have to be
much,
out there. Yeah, you don't want to do too much, but you do have to just focus on
Yeah.
that value. But with that, I think there are so many opportunities in the industry today, right? Like, I
Mm.
think when I was growing up, I actually read this about you, but both my parents are in medicine, and it seems like your parents are as well. And when I was growing up, I just didn't know about so many creative opportunities of like how to make a living, right? It just didn't seem
Yeah.
like a viable option, and now it seems like such a viable option of creating a life in creativity, and to the point that in some ways the market feels saturated, right? Like I'm sure almost everybody you meet is like a creative director or a stylist, and
Or
I
designer.
think it goes, or a designer, yeah. And a lot of that is just like, you can go on Instagram and write down that you are a designer or write down that you are a stylist and post a few things. But I think, that entry into that market can still be kind of scary for a lot of people. I know I get questions about, how designers should enter the market all the time, but do you have any advice for, young stylists trying to make their way and enter that market?
Yeah, I think it's really important to know that if you want to be a stylist, right? One, it's not the most glamorous job. It has glamorous moments, of course, but it's not really a glamorous job. You're working with things that are glamorous, but the job and the deed itself are not. So I think that you have to really commit to learning. There's no real way to skip any steps. Even if you do find a way to skip steps, it will not benefit you in the middle or the end. And I think the most important part about it is humbling yourself and interning for some time for as many people as you can so you can learn not only the way that one person works, you can learn how another person works. And I think also the step after interning is assisting. And I think you need to assist someone who you genuinely respect their work so that you are making yourself invaluable to that person. Because I think sometimes when you work with someone just for the hell of it, just because they're popular or because of who they work with, I think you're more interested in the wrong things. You have to work with the person whose work you respect so that you make yourself invaluable to that person, so that you're actually assisting, you're participating, you're chiming in when you're asked, you're giving suggestions when asked, you're automatically things are clicking in your head like, oh, I see that this happens all the time on set with this person, let me make sure that this is there. You make sure that everything is in order, you make sure that everything is there. I think that's how you make yourself, and it's also great training for yourself because there's going to be times when you become an independent stylist that you know you might not have the best assistant, you're still going to have to do the work yourself, or you might be in the middle of switching teams and you still have to do a lot of the work yourself. It's nothing detrimental to you, it's only help.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you have to be willing to take those steps too. I feel like a lot of people right now are just trying to jump out and say they already are what they are. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
I'm a stylist and I'm a head stylist from day one. But I think there's no rush, I think, in trying to achieve your goals and like being willing to take those steps, in what you're doing.
It takes time.
Intern to assistant to stylist. That takes time, and like that process is also beautiful, like you're saying.
It's beautiful. The easy come, easy go thing is very true. The faster or quicker or easier you get something, you won't even appreciate it. So it's going to go or not last or not be successful because, you have not had like any turmoil or, timo or anything like that to make you really want to fight or work really hard for what you have.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's something I've even learned in my like short career is just like taking the time to learn those steps is what makes you want your goals even more and appreciate what you have even more. So
Exactly.
it's
It's
like
the reason why, you're in the stores that you're in and, with the representation that you have. And that other people don't have the same thing. I think that we all have a different path, but I think you can be a testament to that as well. Like if you take the proper steps, you'll be in the proper places.
I read a funny story. It was the first time that you styled ASAP when you were working at Complex, and you say that it didn't go so well, and that the next time that you wanted to work with him, you wanted to show him what you were made of. And then ultimately, obviously, as we all know now, you guys still work together. So, like, That's like one of those partnerships that's lasted so long and has been so cool, but it sounds like it didn't start off on the right foot. What happened there?
Rocky primarily is a self-styled person. Like he has the best personal style that I've ever met in a human being. He's really creative. He's got a great eye for great pieces, and he really knows like what looks great on him. And that's not a common occurrence when it comes to people in the industry. So obviously, he was also a young artist. It was his first album. Or was it the second album? And because that first album didn't release on streaming, so this essentially was the first mainstream album. So and it was a story with Jeremy Scott, who was a really hot designer at that time, and we were doing a cover. The editor-in-chief and creative director of Complex at that time had this really great idea to do them like Warhol and Basquiat, like that classic photo with Rocky and Jeremy. So since it was Jeremy, and this is also when Jeremy Scott Adidas was launching, we primarily had just Adidas Jeremy Scott on set because it was also going to reveal that first clothing collection that they did underneath Adidas. So it was a really great moment for us as a magazine. And Rocky was already wearing Jeremy's pieces with Adidas, so it was really great, like 360 full circle moment for everybody. When Rocky comes to set, and I think being someone who was a brand new artist, he had already done so many different types of shoots, and he had his fair share of interactions with stylists. So, and then also someone with a strong personal style like him. It's not really necessary for you to have a stylist or have anyone pitch in or chime in on your personal style at all, because you do it yourself and people know you for your personal style. So it's like, what is anybody going to tell me? So yeah, he came on set and he was like just going through the clothes, and he's like, this is the reason why I don't fuck with stylists. And I was like, what? Like, you do realize why we're here. We're just doing a very specific story. He was like, yeah, but still, like, like all this is here, it's, you probably thought this is what I want. I was like, no, like, this is what we're here to do. That's it. Like, if it was, another type of shoot where we were doing things more open-ended, I would go crazy. And, the shoot went well without a hitch. She was really great and gracious on set, but that wasn't always like, that wasn't the best first interaction. And it was really funny because like I had exchanged information with one of the guys from his team, and nothing really happened after that. But then maybe a few weeks, few months, I'm not really sure what the time span was. It's been so long between that first meeting and when he was shooting his first set of like album collateral. His manager at the time reached out to me and was like, hey, like, he's not really into stylists, but, it'd be great if you came by with some things. So, I think that you're really great. And, I was really flattered to be brought on board for someone who I like their music. So I was kind of like, okay, yeah, cool. So, and I did my thing that time. I had clothes. It was like an airport hangar full of fucking clothes, and, the rest is history. He's like a really amazing person to work for. I'm very blessed and I'm fortunate enough to call him a great friend as well. And it's really great to have someone who was at the beginning of your journey and they were at the beginning of their journey, and, to see where we're both at right now is really great. I think it's like a really amazing thing to experience.
Yeah, I mean, in your own way, you're both incredible artists. But I mean, even that story is like you talk a lot about professionalism, but at the same time, you clearly like stand up for yourself as well, right? Like, I feel like if I was on set with ASAP and he's like, this is why I don't fuck with stylists, I'd be like, yeah, no problem, sir. I'll just leave. But you're like, no, this is the job. Yeah, you're like, this is the job. This is what we're doing here. Like, it's an Adidas Jeremy Scott ASAP shoot. That's why these are the clothes. And then the next time you you brought the hanger of clothes.
Next time you see me, I'm gonna go crazy. But I think
so I mean, it's a good story of like resilience,
Yeah, resilience, and also just like knowing yourself. I spoke about it earlier. Not every single experience is going to be a great experience, and not every pitfall or stumble is going to define you or define your relationship with someone. You could meet somebody on set and you don't get along at all, or they say something to you that you might not like, or they don't like the clothes. That doesn't mean that's the last time you're going to see that person. 9 times out of 10, you're definitely going to see that person again, and you have another opportunity to show them what you can do and how you can be an asset and how you guys can work together and move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's almost better to go through a situation with somebody that doesn't go so well and see how you both handle yourselves when you're learning how to work together. Like when everything's going
Yeah.
smoothly, it's really easy for things to be good. But knowing how somebody works in a situation that isn't panning out how people expect it is such a great like test of character, I've always found.
But there's nothing wrong with things going smooth and easy. There's nothing wrong with
There's
that.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
I always tell my team that it's like on days where everything goes wrong and you guys make it through, of course I'm proud of you, but the days I'm proudest of you is when everything goes as planned. You know?
Exactly. I love those days. My favorite days.
Yeah. Speaking of favorite days, do you have anything like what stands out as like a highlight for you? You know, I read a lot about like one outfit that Rocky wore to the 2014 Dior show in Paris that, you know, was a favorite. I'm sure things have changed since then, but is that like a career highlight of yours that stands out to you?
You know, I like I rarely look back at things. So it's it's a bit tricky because you look back and you remember where you were at that point in time in your life and where your client was at that time, and it's kind of like difficult because you're looking at it from bird's eye view. But I think right now, like I'm really into all of the visuals that Abel's releasing for his project right now. I think it's like a real maturation because when we first started working together, it's when he first cut his hair and he was like, very specifically in a specific style. And he's like grown so much in his own personal style and what he showcases in front of the camera. And I think it's really great. It's so strong and understated, but it's so memorable. And I think that like I really appreciate being along for his journey as well, because I do remember when we first started working together, he's somebody that like, his craft speaks so strongly, and like the visual element of it is just supplemental because his artistry it's just unparalleled. So to see where he was back then and to be a part of it, to see where he's at now, I think that it's really amazing. I think we did Moth to a Flame video the other day with Swedish House Mafia. He's like wearing this like really oversized, beautiful Rick Owens puffer jacket that I wanted myself, but we used in the shoot. And like he wore for the first video that came out for this cycle, he wore this really beautiful tailored Vetements jacket. It was like full leather, almost to the floor. He looked just like a cross between like a superhero. There's just so many vibes going on that like I'm really happy with where we're at, and like every shoot I feel like we take it up another notch.
Yeah, I mean the visuals coming out of his last album, and I'm excited to see what's coming from the next one, especially after seeing the Swedish House video and all of that. It's been the visual direction is just so crazy. I mean, everybody knows that team is like just so driven. But how has your juxtaposing those almost like you've been working with ASAP forever? How is that like different from working with Abel? How did you even start working with Abel? I feel like I could ask you a million questions here, but knowing the difference between those processes, I think would be a really interesting place to start.
No, so I met Abel actually through Rocky. Rocky was going to the studio to meet Abel. I was just like tagging along. We met and he was playing music and I was completely like mesmerized by just like who he was as a person and hearing the sounds. And, like shortly after that, like someone from his management team reached out to me and was talking about the new project. And, I was very excited, but also very like not overwhelmed and not hesitant. I really don't know the right word for it, but I really was taking a moment to be like, this is a whole other type of of styling because it's less. It's so highly. I guess everything is. I guess I see it. I don't know why I see it differently, but it's so scrutinized because the fans are just so involved and ravenous if they don't like something, which I quickly learned working with him. Like when they don't like something, they let you know right away. They'll DM you. They'll figure out a way to email you and let you know. It's like his fans are. His fans are so special because along the years I've gotten to know some of them, but it's funny. But no, I met him and shortly thereafter, I had like a really great conversation with Lamar and his managers, and I was really excited because I felt like what they were doing was really cool, and I was really, excited to be a part of, his next chapter. Like I said earlier, he had cut his hair, so he was going for a new look, and I felt like it was really important to be a part of that. Fast forward to today, he's got such discerning taste. Like, he's super like, every fitting, I feel like, whether I'm there in person or on FaceTime, like, every fitting is a pleasure because he's somebody that really knows what he wants. He knows what looks good on him. He knows he's got great taste. He knows how it's gonna, look on camera, how he's gonna be able to move in it. And it's rare that you find people that really understand like how those optics work. Because when you're working on something big like the Super Bowl, like you have to be really mindful of what's at stake.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's funny you bring that up when I ask about career highlights, but the Super Bowl seems like a crazy one. That jacket,
Yeah.
that must have been. How long did that take to make? Like, when did you decide he was wearing that, and how it was being made?
Well, we, through many conversations with Abel, his management, Lamar, and different designers, we came across essentially like he wanted to do an extension of the costume that he'd been wearing throughout the cycle. And he wanted it to be dazzling. He wanted to make sure that it was something that was really going to get attention and stand out from every other part of the production that was happening. So we reached out to Matthew because he had just gotten his role at Givenchy, and it seemed like great timing for such a big moment for Abel, and for it to be equally big moment for Matthew. He's like always lovely to work with, so it was a really great experience. And the one pitfall was that like Abel is a true performer, and he had to do a lot of movements, and the jacket was really heavy. Like a beautiful garment like that takes hundreds of hours because it's hand beaded and hand crystallized. So it took hundreds of hours to make that jacket. And it ended up being like close to like, if not more than 40 pounds. It was a really heavy jacket for us to carry. But even for him to wear and perform, and that was the real thing, and we didn't want his performance to be hindered. But he's a true professional and a true showman, and he acted like that jacket was 2 pounds. And he had an amazing show, and it looked beautiful. Those pictures like live in my head forever. I'm super happy. My favorite visual is of him and all the extras on the side of him with their faces wrapped with him in that jacket. Is something I'll never forget.
Yeah, I remember watching that performance too. It was crazy, and I didn't know until after that it was a 40-pound jacket because you're right. He's moving around like just like the shirt that you and I are wearing today.
Yeah.
True professional. But it's cool to see that. Like, I would never have considered somebody telling me a story about starting to work with Abel and considering whether or not it was the right opportunity for them. Like that's. Like that, when you said that immediately, it's like that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard, right? Because I think so many people are just like, there's an opportunity, you have to take it. But it definitely takes a level of maturity to be like, is this the right fit for me, right?
And not in the way of like, not in that like arrogant way, like, oh, like, do I want to do this? It was more like, could I live up to the responsibility to be an asset to him and his team in the way that I would be needed? I think I had to really check myself to make sure that I could take on that responsibility because it was a lot different than everything that he had done previously in his career. He was moving into a whole new space, and after the album released, he was already a huge artist, but he became like one of the biggest artists in the world. So, to be in the capacity of dealing with the visuals so closely in that way, you have to know if you're prepared for that. And I think it was more of a check for myself, not as in a check getting paid, but I had to check myself and to make sure that I would be able to deliver in the way that that I needed to. And it was a great moment. I mean, sometimes you have to really put your ego aside and your knowledge of being capable aside and know that some things are bigger than you, and you have to really handle them with a lot of care and responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's such like an important lesson. I feel like even early in my career I took some opportunities to design some things for myself or other people where I was like, I wasn't the right fit for that. Like that wasn't good for them, and it definitely wasn't good for me.
But you learn from it. And that's a really important thing. I think that a big part of what we do as stylists, I mean, I guess I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure for all of us, you're always constantly learning. You're learning every day with every interaction with every person, and you're taking those little gems, you're taking those moments, and you're putting them into this long catalog of achievements for yourself. And I think that's like one of the most rewarding parts about this job is that and I'm a student and I love to learn. So I think that every interaction, from like pulling clothes from brands and working with publicists and working with some of our friends at stores, it's really great, and you never stop learning.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the way you got to approach it too, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
maybe you'll end up being jaded or
Yeah.
bored and not want to do it. But it seems like, we talked about it a bit, but it seems like your like perspective and what you do is so much broader than, I think what most people see. I know you told me before that you also are like, pretty involved in your community, especially in New York. Like, can you speak to any of sort of the initiatives that you help work on outside of styling in that community?
Yeah, well, for sure. I think that one of the main things is like, yes, you have to associate yourself with organizations and people and things. I think also when you're moving along in this world and you are in a certain capacity, and you're able to help people, I think it's important to not just look at attaching yourself to a foundation or organization. There's definitely someone that's always around you that needs your help, that needs your advice, that may need a little bit of financial support. And I think it's important for you to start not only with organizations or things that are happening in community, but with the people that are directly in front of you. And again, like I've been really fortunate enough to, employ people, but also have interns, but also have people that don't quite fit in those criterias and mentorships. It's really important to know that every knock at the door is an opportunity for you to help someone. And I think that, I do what I can, and I think I do a really great job. Sometimes the asks are crazy, or just like something that I can't handle, but I do really think that it's important to constantly be giving back and helping people and bringing along people with you on your journey, because that's, again, like the biggest part of your legacy is not what people say, like how well you dressed or like, like what celebrities you're associated with. You want people to say things about you, your character, the type of person that you are. And I think that's a thing that you can take with you outside of like making a lot of money, which is also really important.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, just like you're saying, you're always learning. I mean, being a student means that you know
Yeah.
how important it is to learn from somebody else, and so being able to like pass that learning down, I think is honestly so
Yeah.
important. And it's like amazing to hear you're that involved in your community as well. It's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where if we can all take care of like our community where we are, and everybody does that, then at some point we'll all be taking care of each other. So
Yeah,
I'm
you
happy
can't
to
help
hear
you can't help everyone, but you should help someone.
yeah, for real. That's like a really. I think you
Yeah.
could write that down as a solid piece of advice for anybody. I mean, honestly, and part of that is you being here today, like talking to me and everybody who's listening. I feel like we could go on for hours about all the different work you've done. Is there anything that you're working on coming up that you're really excited about that you want to share, or is it lips sealed as usual?
I am really excited about some things coming up. I'm excited about everything, but I'm really excited about a project that I'm going to be hopefully working on if that contract gets signed. But I think mostly I'm looking forward to just continuing on the path that I've kind of like created for myself, because it wasn't laid out for me, so I kind of just like figured it out and just started walking. Because I feel that there's no shortage of excitement or newness in my work. Like I definitely like to experiment and have fun, and I think that I'm very fortunate in that way to be able to work with people that are like even interested in that part of like my expression of what I do. So I really feel fortunate to have like great partners and great friends that I work with, and I mean, I honestly couldn't ask for anything else. But yes, some very exciting things come up. It's very annoying to like say that there's something coming that I can't talk about, but you'll see it because I'm going to post about it. I'm going to get better at social media.
All right, well that's cool to know. I mean, honestly, I respect that. It's hard to share anything, especially in an industry that's everybody's watching everything you do. But I'm sure we'll all be looking out for whatever's next from you. So
Yeah,
please do put it on Instagram. You can post once more
of
than every
course.
7 months.
Yes.
Well, I mean, before I let you go, I mean, listen. Today's been so chock full of advice. I think even like personally, I just want to thank you. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
I've learned so much. It's also, I feel like the relationship between designer and stylist, especially as an emerging designer, can be like lack transparency sometimes. And to know
Yeah.
more about your job, honestly, is like really eye opening for me. But if there's anything else that you want to share or any wisdom you'd like to impart before we stop, now's your opportunity to do so.
Well, I would also open up, if you have any questions or need, advice, hopefully I'll be able to answer some of your questions or help. You could send me a DM on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram as much as I should be, but I definitely will get to your message as soon as I see it. And, I do think that, regardless of what you see on the internet in regards to like what you may think styling is or like what you think a stylist is, I think it's always good to know if you're an aspiring stylist that there is space for you, there is a lane for you, and that your ideas, your creativity are going to be the thing that sets you apart from everyone else. So just because you don't fit into a box or you may not feel that you look the part, you don't look like everybody else doing it. It doesn't mean that like you won't be successful or that there won't be a lane for you. I think, that's the one thing that I would impart to everybody that's listening and that's endeavoring to do the same thing. And to really encourage people to explore that side of their creativity and know that it will be valued and will be appreciated and it will be something that will bring you big success.
Yeah, and definitely take like learning from you. I mean, when you get knocked down, keep going, and that can turn into some great creative partnerships. So,
100% yes.
all right, well, Matthew, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I want to thank our sponsor TD and of course House for hosting this conversation, and especially to all of you, thank you to everybody who listened today, and I hope you all learned a lot.